Okay, so you clicked play because you saw that question. Are you a boy or a man?
Hmm.
Pretty provocative, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the title of a YouTube video
Mm-hmm.
from a channel called Far From Weak.
Okay.
And it's our jumping off point for this deep dive. We're going to be looking at what this particular source
Right.
argues are the key differences between boyhood and manhood.
Yeah, it definitely gets your attention right off the bat. The video is called Four Things That Turn Boys into Men.
Okay.
Might hurt your feelings. And
Whoa.
it lays out a pretty strong, maybe even challenging perspective.
Yeah.
But, our listeners are always up for understanding different angles on
Right.
personal growth.
Right.
So I think this should be really interesting.
Totally. And I think there are going to be some real aha moments
Yeah.
along the way, potentially.
Sure.
So we're going to be breaking down the four core arguments
Right.
that this video makes
Yeah.
about what leads to that transformation. What are those key characteristics of a man
Uh-huh.
versus a boy in their view?
Okay.
So consider it a shortcut to understanding this one specific viewpoint
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
on masculinity.
Cool.
All right, so the first point they make is all about responsibility.
Responsibility, yeah. They paint a pretty clear picture of what they see as
Okay.
boyhood.
Right.
And it's a tendency to shy away from accountability.
Right.
To look for reasons outside of yourself when things go wrong. And maybe even to see yourself kind of as a victim of circumstances or other people.
It's that classic, it's not my fault
Exactly.
kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And they're saying that's a very boyish
Right.
tendency.
Yeah, and they contract that pretty sharply with their view of manhood,
Okay.
where the focus is all about taking ownership
Right.
of your life, of your actions, of your choices,
Even when it's tough.
especially when it's tough.
Especially when it's tough.
They argue that even if someone else has messed up
Yeah.
or wronged you in some way, a man's going to first look at how he contributed to the situation.
Okay.
Like what part did he play
Interesting.
in this?
Yeah.
And they actually give a really specific example
Okay, I like
that
that.
I thought was interesting. They said,
Yeah.
even if,
Yeah.
let's say you were betrayed by someone,
Right.
you're wronged in some way,
Yeah.
a man would step back and say, okay, well, did I ignore any red flags?
Oh, wow.
Did I make choices that put me in a position to be taken advantage of?
Okay. Yeah, that's a very different way of looking at things.
It really is.
Because it's so easy to point the finger and say, well, it's their fault.
Yeah.
That's kind of the knee-jerk.
And what's interesting here is the idea of
Yeah.
personal agency that they're emphasizing.
Uh-huh.
They make this big statement, like a really bold statement in the video. They say, we are where we are in life, not because of other people, but because of ourselves.
That's powerful.
It's powerful, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not you fully buy into that,
No.
it's a perspective that really encourages you to feel like you have control
Right.
over your own destiny, your
Yeah.
own life.
And our listeners are all about that proactive,
Right.
self-improvement.
Taking the reins.
Yeah, exactly.
Steering your own ship.
So that aligns really well, I think, with what they're saying.
I think so too.
Okay, let's move on to point number 2.
Okay.
Instead of talking.
Yes. This is a good one.
This is one that I think we've all probably encountered in some form or another.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The video talks about this kind of archetype. They call him the friend who took the big game.
Oh, okay.
So, think of that guy.
Right.
Who's always going on about, his supposed success with women.
Right, yeah.
How much money he's making.
Yeah.
Maybe his amazing fighting skills that you've never actually witnessed.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they call these beautiful stories, but the video's perspective is a lot of times those are just empty boasts. Their argument is that this is a trait more common in boys.
Okay.
This trying to get status and recognition through bragging
Right.
and talking themselves up.
Yeah.
When in reality, the facade can crumble pretty quickly.
But then they contrast that with
Yeah.
the man who they say prioritizes action.
It's all about doing, not talking.
It's all about the results.
Right.
And they say men understand that action speaks louder than words.
Walk the walk, don't talk the talk.
Walk the walk, don't talk the talk. Yeah, for sure.
There's even a bit of advice in there
Okay.
that I thought was kind of funny. They say,
Yeah.
know when to keep your mouth shut.
That's good advice. I like that one.
And for our listeners who I know really value
Yeah.
efficiency and real tangible outcomes,
Getting things done.
this is probably going to resonate.
Totally.
This idea of you don't need to announce your intentions.
Just do it.
Just go out and achieve them.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, this next one is where things get a little controversial.
All right, let's hear it.
So this is point number 3.
Okay.
Stop playing video games and fapping.
Okay.
And even the video acknowledges that this might be hard
Right.
for many people to hear.
Yeah, no kidding.
So let's be super careful.
Absolutely.
And unpack this really thoughtfully.
Let's do it.
So they're not pulling any punches here.
Yeah.
They straight up say that video games can be fun. They can give you a sense of challenge, competition.
Right, like all those things that feel good.
Yeah.
Status, conquest.
You're overcoming obstacles. You're achieving.
Yeah.
But
at the end of the day, it's all virtual.
It's all virtual.
Right.
And that seems to be the big sticking point for them.
What's so interesting is how they frame the impact of these virtual achievements.
Okay.
They say like, okay, it feels good in the moment.
Yeah.
You're leveling up, you're beating the boss,
Right.
you're racking up points.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of real world accomplishment, they argue that those are kind of fake achievements.
Oh, okay.
And their concern is that spending too much time in these digital worlds might actually make you less driven
Interesting.
in your real life.
So they see it as like a detriment.
Yeah, like a potential drain.
It's a real world success.
Yeah.
Ambition.
Yeah, they even use the word life force.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. Like it's sapping your energy that could be going towards things that actually move the needle in your actual life.
I see.
Right.
Yeah.
And they put watching online pornography in a pretty similar category. They describe that as a fake conquest as well.
Okay.
Because you're observing other people. Right.
You're not actually interacting.
Exactly.
You're not building real world relationship.
You're not out there connecting and taking risks and
I see.
facing rejection and all of that.
Okay.
Right.
So there's some pretty big implications there.
They even bring up the potential for physical consequences.
Okay.
Like erectile dysfunction.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was a really direct and potentially sensitive
for sure.
point to make.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as they said, this one could be really hard for people to hear.
Yeah.
But the underlying question I think that they're posing to our listeners is about the trade-offs between these virtual experiences
it's digital escape
and how much you're investing in your real-world goals and relationships.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
They're not saying don't ever play video games or...
Don't ever look at anything online.
Right.
It's more about finding that balance.
Yeah, and they're asking you to examine, are these things really fulfilling me?
Right.
Or are they maybe holding me back
right.
from what I really want to achieve?
Wow, that's a big question.
It is.
Okay, let's move on to the fourth and final point.
All right.
Control your emotions.
This is a big one.
This is a huge one.
And once again, they've got a very particular perspective.
Okay, let's hear it.
So they start by saying that boys tend to just do whatever they feel like in the moment, whereas men, they do what needs to be done.
Regardless of.
Whether they feel like it or not.
Yeah, that's a really key difference.
That's a fundamental distinction they're making.
It really emphasizes self-discipline.
Yeah.
Not being ruled by your emotions.
It's not about letting your feelings dictate your actions.
Yeah.
It's about being able to align your actions with your values and your goals.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Even when it's really uncomfortable, exactly.
Oh, and they actually express some concern about the way society is kind of pushing men to be more in touch with their feelings. And they make this comparison with how women might express themselves.
Okay, this is where it gets a little tricky, right?
Yeah, this is where things get a little bit sensitive, potentially, right? So they're saying that, okay, maybe men and women express themselves differently, but just encouraging men to listen to their feelings without cultivating the ability to control those feelings.
Yeah, regulate.
Can actually lead to problems.
Right.
They use the example of road rage, that uncontrolled anger leading to something really harmful.
Wow.
And they go so far as to say that emotional control is one of the most fundamental pillars of masculinity.
That's a big statement.
It is a big statement.
Okay, so then they bring in this statistic about school shooters. They say that 99% of American school shooters came from single mother households.
Right.
And they
link that to
that.
a perceived lack of discipline and order that they associate with father figures.
Okay, so before we go any further,
Yeah.
it's super important for our listeners to remember
that
we are just reporting on what the video says.
Exactly.
We are not endorsing this view
of this particular claim
at all.
Yeah.
We're simply sharing the content.
It's one perspective
as it's presented
within a much broader discussion.
Exactly, and it's a really complex issue.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to be fair to them, the video does try to clarify a little bit. They say emotional control doesn't mean bottling everything up.
It's not about suppressing your emotions entirely.
It's about finding healthy ways.
Yeah, like if you're really struggling, talking to trusted friends.
Process those emotions.
Maybe hitting the gym. You know, finding a physical outlet.
Yeah.
The key, they say, is achieving a level of detachment and objectivity.
So you're not just reacting from a place of
pure emotion.
Raw emotion.
Yeah.
They even give a positive example of, let's say someone was bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
And they use that anger to fuel their workouts and build themselves up physically.
I see.
Right.
So it's like you're taking this strong emotion,
channeling it,
and turning it into something productive.
Into a source of power.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Cool.
So for our listeners, this is a real invitation to look at your relationship with your emotions.
Yeah. How do you handle those big feelings when they come up?
When they come up.
Are you able to manage them in a way?
In a way that serves you?
That serves you.
That serves the people around you?
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to quickly recap.
Right.
The 4 key points from the Far From Weak video.
Yeah.
On their view of what's essential for transitioning from boyhood to manhood.
Let's hear them.
Number 1, taking complete responsibility for your life.
Ownership.
Ownership, yep.
Okay.
Number 2, prioritizing doing and achieving over simply talking.
Action over words.
Action over words, right.
Got it.
Number 3, being mindful of escapism.
Okay.
Whether that's through video games, pornography, whatever it might be.
Recognizing those patterns.
Yeah, and thinking about the impact it's having.
And how they're serving you.
Or not.
Right.
Yeah, and then number 4, developing emotional control. Being able to manage your emotions.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy, constructive way.
And again, this is all according to this one specific source.
These are their arguments.
Their perspective.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now that we've heard all of that,
yeah,
it really begs the question, for you, our listener, thinking about these 4 areas, responsibility, action,
managing escapism,
emotional control.
Yeah.
What's one shift? One specific change that you could make in your mindset or in your behavior that you think would have the biggest positive impact in your personal growth?
That's a really powerful question to consider.
It is. Yeah. And then how does that potential change line up with what you believe really makes for a meaningful life?
That is such a great question for our listeners.
It's something to chew on, for sure.
To really reflect on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thank you for going on this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Into this particular view of what it means to be a man.
Unique perspective on...
We hope it's given you a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it has for me.
I think it has for me, too.
Cool.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See you later.